Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskrityam
Narayanam Namaskrutyam
Naran Chaiva Narottamam
Naram Chaiva Narottamam
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Devim Saraswatim Vyasa
Tato Jayamudire
Tato Jayamudire
Nashtaprayasu Abhadresu
Ashtapayesva Bhadreshu
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Bhagavati Uttama Sloke
Bhagavati Uttama Sloke
Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki.
Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki.
So today we're going to discuss the chapter 16 of Bhagavad Gita, because we have taken some of the top verses from chapter 16 in the past, and we're going to discuss chapter 16 summary today. And the chapter 16 is titled The Divine and Demonic Nature. So we'll try to make it more interactive in the sense that in between, if there is a verse which needs one of you to read the entire thing which is on the screen. So please take the opportunity to read it when I display it. Essentially, when we talk about the divine and demonic natures, so what Krishna did in chapter 15, we'll start with that, and we'll discuss how Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, transcended from chapter 15 to chapter 16, and how he laid out the qualities, and then he laid out the consequences of having such qualities, and then he gave a solution around how we should lead our life to give up those qualities. So with that, let's offer our prayers together by chanting Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya
Jnananjana
Chakshurmilitam
ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया
Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave
चक्षुरुन्मिलितं
Namah
येन तस्मै
Sri
श्रीगुरवे
Chaitanya
नमः
Manobhistam Sthapitam Yena
श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं
Bhutale
स्थापितं येन
Swayam Rupa
भूतले
Kadamaiham
स्वयं
Dadati
रूपकदामह्यं ददाति
Swapadantikam
स्वपादान्तिकं
Vandeham Shri Guru
वन्देऽहं
Shri
श्रीगुरो
Uttapadakamalam Shri Guru
श्रीयुतपादकमलं श्रीगुरुन्
Vaishnavamsha
वैष्णवं
Shri
च
Rupam
श्रीरूपं
Sagrajatam
साग्रजातं
Sagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam
सहगणरघुनाथन्वितं तं
Sajivam
सजीवं
Tat
साद्वैतं
Sadvitam
सावधूतं
Savadutam Parijana
परिजनसहितं
Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya
कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं
Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana
श्रीराधाकृष्णपादां
Lalita Sri Vishakha Vitamsha He
Vidanavamsanta.
Krishna
He
Karuna
Krishna
Sindhu
Karuna
Dinabandhu
Sindhu
Jagatpate
दीनबन्धो जगत्पते
Gopesha Gopika Ganta
गोपेश
Radha Kanta
Radhakanta
Namastute
गोपिकान्ता
Namaste.
नमस्तुते
Takanchana Gaurangi
Radhakanta
Radhe
काञ्चनगौराङ्गी
Vrindavaneshwari
राधा
Namaste.
वृन्दावनेश्वरी
Shivanasuti Devi
Shivanamasuti
Pranamami Hari
शिवानंसुति
Devi
Priye
प्रणमामि
Pranamami Hari
हरिप्रिये
Priye.
Vanchakalpataru Vaishya Kripa Sindhu
वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च
Vacha
सिन्धुभ्यैव
Patitanam Pavanebhyo
पतितानं
Vaishnavebhyo
पावनेभ्यो
Namo Namo
वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो
Jai Shri
नमः
Krishna
Jai Shri
Chaitanya
Krishna
Prabhu
Chaitanya
Nityananda
Prabhu
Shri Advaita
महाप्रभुनित्यानन्द
Gadadhar
Nityananda
श्री
Shivasadi
अद्वैत
Adi Gaura
गदाधर
Bhakta Vrinda
श्रीवासादि
Hare
गौरभक्त
Krishna
Hare
हरे
Krishna Hare
कृष्णा
Krishna
हरे
Hare Hare
कृष्ण
Krishna
कृष्ण
Hare
Hare
हरे
Rama
हरे
Hare Rama
Hare
Rama
Rama
हरे
Rama
राम
Hare
राम
Hare
राम
Hare
हरे
Hare.
Achal Nivasa Nitya Paramatmane Prabhata Subhadrabhyam Jagannatha Namo. So thank you so much for joining this chapter 16 summary. So here Krishna mentioned about chapter 15, where the material world he mentions is actually a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. As you can see in chapter 15, we discussed this. This is the spiritual world, and there is uh, a water reflection, and there you see the banyan tree is upside down, and when the banyan tree is upside down, as the person is going way down in the banyan tree, there are different kinds of conditioning the person is subjected to. There's an element of goodness with Vedic hymns, and there is an element of sense gratification. There is economic development, and there are so many things which is really going through the branches, sub branches, twigs, and as you can see, this person is having very difficult going from one branch to another. But in this perverted reflection, what Krishna did not lay out is the fruits of the tree, and those fruits of the tree is something he left for the subsequent chapter. So when he discussed the tree, he discussed everything, but he discussed about what are the fruits of the tree. Uh, a fruit of a tree can be very good. They're good fruits. And there can be fruits of the tree which are bad. So the good fruits of the tree are often called the divine qualities, the qualities which nourishes the tree to stand tall. And the bad fruit attracts, vultures and whatnot, and they often create problems for the tree again and again. So when Krishna moved from chapter 15 to chapter 16, he laid a perfect segue. Krishna, when he's explaining these verses, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He knows how we can understand this simple science. Actually, the science is very simple. It can only be understood by simple people. But because we are not simple, we cannot understand this, and we are having difficulty. At one point in time, in the Satya Yuga, in Dwapar Yuga, Treta Yuga, the ability to receive this wonderful science was very prevalent, and people were receiving it. But the simple science is actually a science, and it's scientific, and there are steps you do, and at the end of the day you get answers to the steps, you get benefits of the step. So when you do not follow these steps, you may end up having negative consequence, and when you follow the steps properly, you may have positive consequence. So there Krishna lays out in the verses 1 to 3 in this chapter about the divine qualities, and then in 4 to 6 he lays out the demoniac qualities. And then from 10 to 20, he discusses, discusses about the activities of demoniac people and the consequences of following demoniac principles and practices. And then in the 20 to 24, which is why this chapter is a small chapter, but is a full of impact chapter, Krishna gives us the benefits of giving up demonic tendencies and the importance of following scriptures. So that's how the chapter is laid out, and it's a beautiful chapter. And if you have understood this chapter, you have got a perfect segue onto the surrendering, which is coming in the 17th and 18th chapter. Which, so once you know why you are doing this and what you're going to do, then later it leads you to how you will end up doing. So often in your practical life, in your IT or wherever, as long as you know why you are doing it, why we're subjected to this kind of conditioning, why Krishna is laying out these things for our benefit, and then and what is this process, then you can lay out and discuss about the solutioning or the how part of it. So with that, so let's try to discuss this verse. If anybody would like to read these 3 verses of Bhagavad Gita, just read the verses. There is, if you can see the verses, it's 16.1, 2, and 3, which is over here. If anybody would like to read, let's read this so that it's a perfect segue of Krishna laying out what are the good qualities and what are the divine qualities or the good qualities or the good fruits. These are the attributes of good fruits. So any Prabhuji or Mataji would like to read this verse only, then we'll talk a little bit about the translation and the synonyms.
Abhayam Sattva Samsuddhir. This one, Prabhuji,
Yes,
the verse.
yes, go ahead, Prabhu. You're right, doing well.
Yeah. Abhayam Sattva Samsuddhir Jnana Yoga Vyavasthitihi Danam Damascha Yajnascha Swadhya Yastapa Arjavam Ahimsa Satyam Akrodhas Tyagah Santir Apesunam Daya Bhuteswa Anunupatvam Mardavam Harir Achapanam Tejaha Kshama Dhritihi Saucham Adrohanati Manita Bhavanti Sampadam Daivim अभिजातस्य भारत.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. So as you can see, there are 26 qualities Krishna is explicitly mentioning are the qualities which identifies a divine personality. You may have some of them, you may not have um, some of them to full, but our ability to acquire this, so we should lay out, right? Whenever we need some motivation, you'll put it on a fridge. Okay, this is what I want to do. There are some wonderful sayings. You try to make a magnet out of it and put it on your fridge. So you really do not have to go any further. You do not have to go to Niagara Falls to get that magnet to put it. This is the words, and these are the good qualities you all should aspire for, which Prabhuji just read. And Krishna starts with Abhayam. Abhayam means fearlessness. There are 26 of them. We'll go after one of, and so fearlessness for what? So we should not have fear for the aspects which are in the mode of goodness. We should be fearful of doing wrong things, and we should have fearlessness in doing what is right, what is mentioned in the scriptures. What is right and wrong is not by our mental concoction. It is based on what is written in scriptures by the Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra process. So it starts with being fearless. Then our ability to purify our existence. We are here in this material world because we are part and parcel of the Supreme, but we have chosen to have an independent lifestyle. And Krishna is very merciful. And because of that, we have uh, been existing in a world which is separate and which is the material world, which is not in the spiritual world. We do not belong here. But our attempt to purify our existence will lead us to that transition wherein we can go back to Godhead. So the going back to Godhead, which you may be hearing from so many sources, is only be done by purification. The purification process is, whenever you purify, you have, a day has passed and you are ready to take your bath because it purifies your process of cleanliness. So likewise, our purification of existence is because of the soul. Once the soul leaves our body, we are useless. So in that context, how we should end up purifying our soul is the ability of a person who has divine qualities. The people who are asuric or the people who are demoniac in nature, they do not believe in purification because for them, their body, they think their body is everything. But for us, dehinam shvin yatha dehi. That means dehi, we are embodied. We are not the body, we're embodied. That means we are embodied because of the presence of the soul, we are existing. And without the presence of the soul, we do not exist in this world. So what we should do to purify the soul is the essence of the second attribute of divine qualities. The third thing Krishna talks about, sattva samsuddhir, which is the purification of one's existence. Then he talks about jnana. Jnana means not acquiring big degrees. See, acquiring big degrees, what is happening is with the acquisition of big degrees, we get so much invested in that degree that we do not think anything other than that knowledge can be beneficial in our upbringing, in our process. So we go after knowledge which is going to get us good jobs. That's the reason why the universities are providing and creating a factory for big companies. However, the real knowledge or jnana in this example is to understand who we are, who is the supreme, and what is the relationship between it. So that's where the third quality is how to cultivate knowledge so that we know that relationship. And then charity. So charity for the right cause, and charity is dhanam in this example, which Krishna is mentioning here so beautifully. and that the dhanam is in the form of giving knowledge, giving, helping others. Once you start helping others, you arouse that sense of compassion in life, and that compassion is a tenet of staying regulated. If you can understand the pain of somebody else, that will give you that extra quality of Krishna consciousness, which is so deep rooted. And then we can spend a lot of time on each of these, but then Krishna talks about self-control, dhamma. That means in order to really transcend to higher levels of knowledge and higher levels of consciousness, we need to have self-control. If we have traces of greed to eat more sweets and do not have the self-control, after some time we will tend to have diabetic in our life. So our ability to control not just having our eating habit, our desire habit, or trying to sort of go in a rat race of increasing our wealth without thinking what wealth is going to help when it comes to our real purpose of life. So, as long as we have that understanding of self control, or having our ability to control our body, mind, and words, BMW, which we discussed some time back, that is very crucial in our ability to foster that divine qualities. And performance of sacrifice. So sacrifice in the sense of sacrificing for our family, sacrificing for a friend, and our a person can only sacrifice if he has some inherent qualities. uh, Generally speaking, the people who have never sacrificed in their life, they do not know what they're missing in their life. Once you start sacrificing your sleep in the morning, once you start sacrificing for the comfort or the ego we have of wearing a dhoti, often we are preconceived with the notion that I'm wearing a pant. When I give up this pant for the supreme, because we're so conditioned that we will wear suits and tie just because our CXO of the company needs us to wear that. But at the same time, the Vedic way of approaching life, of wearing dhoti or trying to get rid of our appearance in terms of whatever is bona fide, we are not ready to have that little sacrifice, because we think what others will tell. Because but when others are not conscious, does the value of that person who is not conscious enough is important in your life, in your pursuit of Krishna consciousness? That's very important. And the seventh is we have to study Vedas in the form of there are so many aspects of Vedic knowledge in terms of how this Varnashram was created, how there is this injunction which got later misused as caste system, whether it is our ability to what to eat, what not to eat, and austerity. Number eight, tapa, simplicity is very important, because Krishna consciousness is a very simple
Hello.
process. Chant and be happy. But often we do not have the faith, and that's the reason why we ask so many questions. And any WhatsApp group you end up going, you realize that Krishna consciousness is often challenged because they don't see the value or the benefit of Krishna consciousness. And there is a lot of chatter in the world about how this process is so simple, that how can it be beneficial? You just chant and you go back to Godhead. Can that be so simple? Yes, the process is very simple. It's just that we are not simple. We do not understand the simplicity. We have to be non-violent, not non-violent in our ability to fight with others or killing others, as you will see in the wars going on. But our ability in our eating habits, how do we control? How do we inculcate that sense of non-violence in our food habits, which is very, very important, and which is why this is one of the pillars of dharma, which we discussed earlier. There are 4 pillars of dharma. Truthfulness. Out of the 26, there are 4 pillars of dharma, which is embedded here, which we discussed earlier. Truthfulness, not relying on ability to lie and grow. A time will come, then you'll be caught, and at the time there will be too much of baggage we have. Then freedom from anger. Often when you feel anger, you become blind. And when you become blind, you say whatever things you want to say to others, and that blindness, there are people who do so many ghastly things which you can't this can imagine in your life. We have to renunciate. We have to give up things. If we can't give up multiple rasgullas in life, if you can't renunciate, a time will come you'll have diabetic. Once you have so much anger, your blood pressure will go up. So we have to renunciate. We have to have a sense of peace and calm and tranquility in our life, which Krishna is saying as number 14. And we have to recognize that when you point fingers at others, there are 4 fingers pointing at us, and we have to step away from fault finding. And we have to have compassion, which is very much relevant, non-violence compassion. But the compassion, our ability to be compassionate to seniors, our ability to be compassionate to the needy is very, very significant in building up this repertoire of divine qualities. Freedom of covetousness. That means, the duplicity in our mind. We are one thing which is inside, and there is another thing which is outside. This kind of attitude is really not going to help us, because Krishna is in our hearts, and if we are outside something and inside something, Krishna is watching us. So that is really not. We have to be very. So that's why they say Vaishnava's life is like a crystal clear mirror. What is outside is out inside. If we start having duplicity, we'll have a lot of problem, because Krishna doesn't like his devotees to be duplicity in their attitude. We have to be a gentleman. Krishna Prabhupada says, all my disciples are perfect gentlemen. They do not discriminate by the color of the skin or where you came from, your background. For them, they're all part and parcel of Krishna. Aham bija prajapita, aham sarvasya prabhu. Everything comes from. So because of that attitude, there is so much of uh, unity in diversity in Krishna consciousness we see around the world. We have to be modest we can't be extreme in our thought process. And once you become extreme, it really ceases to make us uh, believe and talk in a very sound, judgmental way. And and we have to have steady determination. We can't be erratic in our thought process. We have to be steady. We have to have vigor. We have to have a sense of forgiveness. And forgiveness is a thing which we have to build. It doesn't happen. That's the reason why it's a tall order for all of us to ask, because this is a journey in our life. And our ability to align ourselves to these 26 qualities will really help us in futures. And that is exactly the purpose of Bhagavad Gita discussion we're doing. We have to have that element of fortitude. And of course, a cleanliness is very important. If you're clean outside, it really helps you, it transcends into your behavior or your other qualities. Sometimes these good qualities are contagious, exactly like the bad qualities. So once you start in the path of arriving and accepting these good qualities, it multiplies. Suppose you have a friend who is a good person. Sometimes the habit of that friend will rub on you, and the quality of that or the good quality of that friend will rub on you, and you tend to acquire those good qualities. And that is why cleanliness is a very common thing. We have to keep our houses clean, our body clean, by taking bath every day, multiple times if possible. And freedom from envy. Envy is an situation where we feel happy when others is unhappy, and we feel unhappy when others are happy. and that is a duplicity which we just went over, and that duplicity is arousing that envy, and envy is one of the three. It basically blocks you from going into heaven, because that is what it stops you in your ability to see good in others, and our ability to uh, sort of derive pleasure in getting big positions. So that is where the self control is not there, and then and that honor is around, you're doing something good and you want everybody to tell you that you are doing good. So that hankering of listening good about us is such a thing, which we are living in a material society, and everybody is trying to get good A grades in their so it's a rat race, and that is where there's so much of hankering going on, and because of that, people are resorting to all inhuman relationships, and the passion to seek honor, and the passion to seek uh, you know greatness is such a thing. It's a trait which we all should give up, because if everybody praises you and Krishna doesn't praise you, it's not really beneficial in any way. Try to be acceptable to Krishna through our dealings, and if Krishna knows that through our heart that we are having we are having a wretched plan to put somebody in danger and all that, Krishna sees us, and that is a thing which is really so. I hope this 26 good qualities, which because in this verse, out of the 24 verse, Krishna has spent 3 verses on good qualities, which we did not pursue, because Krishna has spent 21 verses about the demoniac qualities, and and that's the reason why I thought we'll end with the good qualities and then discuss a little bit about the other 4 themes of this verse. So in this chapter, so now we are going to go into the demoniac quality, and we'll quickly go over the activities of demoniac people and the consequences. And we have a verse where Krishna talks about the giving up of the demoniac tendencies. So that's the theme. So if anyone wants to read this verse, uh, so that this is the summary of chapter 16. We went over it. So this is a time when we want participation. So anybody would like to read this verse, Prabhuji or Mataji?
दम्भो दर्पोऽभिमानश्च क्रोध पारुष्यम् एव च अज्ञानं च अभिजातस्य पार्थ सम्पद आसुरीम्.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. So there are 6 demoniac qualities which Krishna is mentioning in this 4th verse of chapter 16. He talks about pride. Pride is a thing which comes because for us we have achieved something which is too much for us to handle, and we think the others do not have these achievements, and that's the reason why we have that puffedness. But we should all recognize that Krishna has those 6 qualities, which is why he is Bhagavan. So in comparison to the Supreme, who is watching us all the time, these achievements are fake. These are very temporary, and for that little achievement, we have that puffed upness, we have that ill-conceived notion that we have achieved a lot, and we tend to look down on others by being judgmental. And this is a quality which often leads and grows and grows, and eventually is the cause of falling down. And this is not just happening with uh, these qualities are also in devotees. Some devotees have the inner pride that they're the most humblest person in the world. But Krishna subjects them to situations where they could reflect on each other by saying that how that pride of that so-called fake humility is triggering that pride in them. And that is something we have to be watch out for. And because of this pride, we have this arrogance, exactly like Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha. They had the utter ignorance, arrogance actually, to really Hiranyaksha, he lifted Mother Earth from the ocean, and Varahadev had to fight him and had to kill Hiranyaksha. Sheer arrogance, sheer lack of respect for the authority, and conceit, which is, this duplicity, this political attitude, and this anger turning us to be, when Ravana saw his sister Suparnaka's nose cut out, he became so much anger that he really wanted to teach Ramji a lesson. But at the time, he forgot, through the anger, he became so blind that he forgot that Ramji is the Supreme Personality of God. He became totally blind, and you become abrasive, you become very harsh in your dealings. When that puffed upness, that pride is inherent in you, you become very harsh to your family members, to your relatives, to your friends, to devotees. And then when you become blind of things happening because of anger, pride, you become ignorant about the truth. And you're totally in that dark pit where you just couldn't see the light. And in order to get us out of that dark condition, we say, let the knowledge acquired from Guru and Sadhu and Shastra enlighten us so that we could understand this. When we start with Agyana Timirandasa, because we are in this, we are ignorant and we are in this dark world, and this knowledge or the lightness of Bhagavad Gita can only enlighten us and awaken us and can get rid of the 6 demonic qualities which Prabhuji read. So now let's go to the third theme of this chapter, which is the activities of demoniac people and the consequences. So we picked a verse from here. Anyone would like to read this verse, please? Go ahead, Prabhu.
Can I go, Prabhu?
Yes.
Or anyone else? Okay. Atmasambhavitah stabdha dhanamana madanvitah jajante nama yajnaste dambhina vidhipurvakam.
Thank you, Prabhu. So because of these demoniac qualities, there is a lot of false pride, dambhena. There's so much of dambha, so most of these demoniac people, they'll please somebody. They'll please Brahmaji, Shivaji, but they are wonderful devotees of the Lord, and they become pleased with their little service, and they say, let your desire be fulfilled. But because they got the false indication from a semi-authority, they create that element of aura of pride around. And because of that, they become a vidhi. They do not follow any vidhi. That means uh, they they create their own rules, regulations. They do not follow the practices. And then when you come into that world, you realize what's going on. Why there is this mess? Why there is nothing in order? It is because of the limited uh, power given to them by intermediate authority. They have created their own rules and regulations. So they become complacent, and they are impudent, deluded by wealth and false prestige. And because of that, whenever the politicians, they stay in their position unless they're conscious enough, or anybody for that matter, it's just not politician, it can happen with anybody, then they they lead a life where they do not follow the scriptures. They create their own scriptures, and that's the reason why there is so much of envy. And the envy is just not limited to us. They even envy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they cannot stand the success. Even we are not being very defensive in this world. Even the Supreme Personality of Godhead had to fight, had to, they had so many people who were going against them, the Asuras, the Kamsas of the world, the Ravanas of the world. See, if you think that we are in trouble, we are not. Lord is giving example of his behavior at that point in time, that they got so much of resistance. In this age, whenever we have difficulty with your boss, for example, or with your family members, for example, you did not see anything in comparison to what the Supreme Personality of Godhead had seen. You know, the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the Rukmini pastime, they they treated him as if he eloped, but actually the internal meaning of taking Mother Rukmini is different. The when Devki and Vasudev's seven kids were attempted to be killed by Kamsa, the kind of thing they went through, the kind of thing Devki Maharani went through is unthinkable. We are not subject to any of that. For example, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance. Several kids of Sachi Mata passed away and they couldn't see the light of the day. Very difficult situation. There was apasampradaya. The kind of challenges Lord and his devotees have faced is actually an example for us to recognize that we have nothing. We're in a much better situation. Actually, if we read scriptures, if you read scriptures, you'll realize how terrible time Mother Kunti went through after the husband, after her husband passed away, and she had so much a difficulty, and she says, when I am in difficult position, I remember you, so don't let me get out of the difficult situation, because we have seen no difficulty in our life, and that is a test of time. And in order to stay composed, in order to stay focused, more and more we remember the Supreme and understand this, what Supreme Personality of Godhead went through, we will have more faith in the Supreme day after day and day after day. That's the reason why it's very important to hear scriptures every day in our life. So the last theme, which Krishna is summarizing here in verse 20-24, is how giving up of the demoniac tendencies can be fostered by following scriptures. So if someone would like to read the last verse of today, which basically touches on the importance of Vedic injunctions. So Krishna is stating the problem. Krishna is telling consequences of the problem, and Krishna in this verse is stating the solution of the problem. So as we go through your daily chores of life as to fast, why you should do it, and what you should do, and then it perfectly segue to a solution of why. Most of you are from the information technology world. You exactly know how we state a problem and why the problem has to be solved, and then gather what has to be solved, then you find the how or the solution around. So here we're talking about the how. Krishna is talking about the how. So someone, even if you have read it, if no one else is reading, please come forward and read this beautiful scripture, real verse, because these verses are uttered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The summary of this chapter, when we do after in this Bhakti Vriksha, the intent is you give back something to the discussion forum, so that it's a 360-degree process of knowing each other and discussing at the end of course. So someone would like to read the 23rd verse in here, if you can see.
यः शास्त्रविधिम् उत्सृज्य वर्तते कामकारतः न स सिद्धिम्
सिद्धिम्
अवाप्नोति
अवाप्नोति
नो
न
सुखं न
सुखं न
परां
परां
गतिम्.
गतिम्.
Very nice, very nice. So when devotees utter it, because this is a song of God, right? Bhagavad Gita. Gita is sung. Bhagavad is God, song of God. So when this verses are sung by devotees, by hearing that process of singing, because if there is a tune, if there's a movie tune, you catch on to it. Likewise, if you catch on to this song or the tune, which sometimes when our sannyasis or maharaj read this verse, we want to hear it again and again, and it's a melancholy strain where we relish that singing of the beautiful verse which is coming from the beautiful lotus mouth of the Supreme. So here Krishna says, he who discards spiritual injunctions. This is the solution part. This is where Krishna is giving the how, the solution or the design of the architecture whenever we think about that. One, he who discards spiritual injunction and act according to his own whims attains neither perfection nor happiness nor supreme destination. So what Krishna is saying, that this is going a segue to 17 and 18 chapter, where we're getting to the end of Bhagavad Gita, where we're going to end with surrender, because Krishna is gradually going towards that. So here Krishna is saying that if anything which is written in scriptures, that is right. Anything which is not written in scriptures, that is wrong. What that means is, if you have your own conclusion, so there are people who will say Ravana stole Sita and he was right, because Ramji's brother Lakshman cut the nose of Ravana's sister. So
Yes.
in isolation, if you hear in a court setting, it may look right. Yeah, he cut, so he did, so tit for tat, it's right. But that is not how it is written in the scriptures. Scriptures give a mirror image of what is right, what is wrong. That's why the scriptures are the law books of how we should lead our life. And if that is not being pursued and defined properly and is understood properly, we are going to make mistakes. See, it's not as if we don't make mistakes every day. Every day is an opportunity to learn more and more and more. And our ability to come back to scriptures can only repose our faith in scriptures, and we try not to lead our life based on our own whims and fancies. We tend to become whimsical. We listen something in YouTube and we think that is right, and then it has no spiritual correlation, and that takes us in a downward spiral. And then we have to come back through Guru Sadhu Sastra, and then come back. Then all of a sudden we see some sign near the exit, and we take the exit. Then we come back. So it becomes a situation where we have to constantly keep coming back, and that is the reason why we have the speed breakers on the right side of the road, so that we come back to the lane properly. We come back to the lane properly. So it's a constant adjustment in our life. So our ability, if we put that into habit of hearing scriptures, attending Bhakti Vriksha, and just keep focusing on the injunctions and not create laws by our own self, it's going to be significant. So in this context, I just want to share one thing, that I happened to attend some meeting where there are sannyasis who are discussing a management problem. Okay, so when they discuss the management problems, because they have led their life in Krishna consciousness for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. So their life has become totally reverberating uh, with sandarbhas, with legal injunction from the scripture. So whenever they take a decision or share a decision or share a way in which they're going to come up with a decision, they refer to a past time of the Lord, how that injunction aligns with the sandarbha from the scriptures. So that's the reason why more and more we bring purity in our life, will lead a life around scriptures. Lead a life around scriptures doesn't mean we go to office in dhoti or go to Himalayas, but leading a life the with the intelligence, with the knowledge we have got from scriptures. So that's how we have to understand. So it's basically focusing on one thing, that we have to lead our life around scriptural references, and and that's how we'll slowly and gradually get rid of the demoniac qualities which is present in us. So we can go on and on, but we would like to stop here and sort of discuss a little bit with your comments, corrections, and reflection as we summarize chapter 16, which is a very powerful chapter. It gives us the traits of how we should lead our life. So if you can open up with your comments, corrections, reflections, that will be wonderful. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Any thoughts, Prabhuji, Mataji?
Prabhuji, as we heard that this material world is reflection of the transcendental world. But in the material world, there are good thing and bad thing. So what about, transcendental, process?
Yes. So in material world, there are good things also. The reason why there are good things, because if there hadn't been any good things in this material world, we wouldn't be surviving, right? We would be constantly. But what is happening as the memory of individuals are coming down, as the memory span is coming down, our attention span is coming down, and as there is earlier, what was happening in Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, people were more alert. People, everything available was pure, and that's the reason why uh, their traits, their qualities are divine in nature. But as the time is progressing, it is mentioned in the scriptures also, because one the medicine for the Satya Yuga being being meditation, but the med, uh, but our meditational technique is not pure, because there is so much of disturbance. That's why by the time it comes to Kali Yuga, it says Kalota Dhari Hari Kirtana. That means just Hari Kirtana is the medicine for Kali Yuga. What does that mean? What it means is there has been constant degradation over a period of Satya, Treta, Dwapar, and Kali. And because of that, so but that doesn't mean in Kali Yuga we have no good things. There is still people who are attempting to keep it afloat with good behavior, good qualities. So still, Prabhu, there are good uh, uh, statements, good uh, people we can lean in on, and based on that, there is still hope. There is still hope. It's not as if this material world is a gone case. It's not like that. So there are definitely good outcomes, there are good behavior, and there are people who are there to guide us. They are wonderful. sannyasis who are leading by example, yad yad acharati srashta, as Krishna mentions, if our leaders become Krishna consciousness, this place, we will not be fighting because we'll see everyone as a soul and as part and parcel of Krishna, and you will be treating each other as our siblings, and we will not end up in fight. That's the reason why Srila Prabhupada said that if the entire world can become Krishna consciousness, Krishna conscious, then there'll be so much of harmony among each other. So even if it is a perfected reflection, as you saw in that tree, there are good branches in the tree, and there are still divine qualities in the age of quarrel and hypocrisy as well. It's not as if everything is doomed. There is still hope in this material world. Is that okay, bro?
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Any comments, bro? Any
Hare
other
Krishna
comment?
Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, all Guru Srila Prabhupada.
Hare
Sorry
Krishna.
Prabhuji, I had work and I could join only now. Prabhuji, on that point, what you are discussing, I didn't know what the question was, but one thing what came to me when you were explaining, Prabhuji, is that this we should understand this good and bad, Prabhuji. This good and bad is a very relative concept. Actually, material world. The problem is we think of good or bad because we aim for perfection, Prabhuji, and this material world is not perfect. Only one.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, you became, Prabhu, you muted yourself. Prabhu, you muted yourself.
No, Prabhuji.
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Sorry for that. I didn't have my glasses and I was, I think, rolling the screen. What I'm telling, what my realization is, Prabhuji, the good and the bad is to transform our consciousness, Prabhuji, because this is a correction facility, right? So since this is a correction facility, we have to the things that happen to us and we perceive as, there is a shlok in Bhagavad Gita also, I'm not perceiving. It is because of the modes of the nature and what we have acquired, we perceive what is good or bad. And this perception is important for our transformation of consciousness, knowingly or unknowingly, Prabhuji. So good and bad is a relative, like Sitoshna Sukha Dukha, it is a relative to our time and situation, Prabhuji. Later, if we do the, if we see the hindsight, we think that the bad is was for some good only, Prabhuji. So that is, I didn't know the question what Prabhuji has asked, but this is what I wanted to tell. We should not aim for 100% goodness in this. Only 100% goodness is in Vaikunta. That's what Prabhupada says. Vaikunta. Vaikunta is a place where you can expect that, Prabhuji, but not on this, in the material world. And in the material world, we classify dual, because of the duality, we classify that as good or bad, but everything is to the, we are going through the reformation and the transformation process. That's why, that's how our soul perceives it, Prabhuji. That is one point which I wanted to share my realization.
Right. So, so good and bad is a yardstick based on our consciousness. So, and also Krishna mentions in 16.23, as we discussed, that is based on the scriptures. So our knowledge is limited, our consciousness is not pure. So obviously there will be a gray area in our ability to arrive at good and bad. So that's why we need some guidance in our ability to detect good and bad. So as you said, this is a journey, and we are constantly reforming each other in our ability to get out. So more and more we stay conscious, become conscious, practice consciousness. Our ability to do right, the real right, will improve over a period of time.
Right, Prabhuji. That is what the consciousness level. Like, see, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has the consciousness of the love of Godhead, how to love Krishna, Prabhuji. It is not that he got incarnated and he's showing, but that he reached to that consciousness in the human form of life to tell that what is the love of Godhead. So we should strive to attain that level of consciousness, Prabhuji.
Right.
And
Definitely.
Prabhuji, on this, for example, on this good and bad, I like to throw an example. We friction, Prabhuji, the physics concept of friction, Prabhuji. We think that the friction is bad, Prabhuji. If the friction was not good, what would have happened? If the friction was not there, we may think the friction is bad. If the friction was not there, nothing would have stopped moving, right? And nothing, we would have a disaster. So friction is good and bad also. That's what I wanted to tell, that it depends upon how we are using it. Same Prabhupada in many examples gives the knife can be used to do surgery, the knife can be used to basically do wrong things also, right? So it is how, as we all are understanding, it is how we use our consciousness to use that. So if we use it for a negative purpose, which is taking away from Krishna, then we classify that as bad. So that is how one way of looking at Prabhu.
Very nice. Thank you. Any
Hare
other
Krishna.
comments and any reflections? So was the summary of chapter 16 helpful, and we had participation across the Bhakti Vriksha members? I hope it is helpful.
Definitely, sir.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for summarizing the chapters, because I missed one of the class and it was helpful to understand on a whole.
Okay, thank you, Badaji, for attending. And whenever you all attend, you definitely bring a perspective to our thought process in terms of discussion, or in terms of your participation or your uttering of the verses, because these verses are not written by any mortal. It is written by the Supreme Personality. It's spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So your any form of participation is encouragement, and it helps all of us stay knit in this Krishna consciousness world and follow the principles laid by our founding acharyas. So if there is no other question, we can end here by offering prayers at the lotus feet of Vaishnavas. Vancha kalpataru kripa sindhu evacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo. Vaishnava ki jai, Shila Prabhupada ki jai, Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.
Hari Hari Bol.